The corporate greed that killed Boeing. October 29th, 2018. The sky above the Java Sea is calm. Inside the cockpit of Lion Air Flight 61, something is terribly wrong. The pilots don't know it yet, but they are fighting an enemy they cannot see. The aircraft is brand new, a Boeing 737 MAX, one of the most advanced airliners in the world. Just minutes after takeoff from Jakarta, warning alarms begin to sound. The nose of the airplane suddenly pitches downward. The captain pulls back. The airplane responds for a moment. Then it happens again, and again, and again. The pilots are confused. Every few seconds, an invisible force pushes the aircraft toward the ocean. The crew struggles to understand what is happening. They scan instruments, they run checklists, they wrestle with the controls, but the aircraft keeps diving. What they don't know is that hidden deep inside the software is a system called MCAS, a system they were barely told existed, a system that believes the airplane is about to stall, a system that is wrong. For 11 agonizing minutes, man and machine fight for control. Then, at more than 500 miles per hour, the aircraft slams into the sea. 189 people die. 5 months later, another Boeing 737 MAX falls from the sky. 346 lives are gone. The world searches for answers. And investigators begin uncovering a story that stretches back decades, a story about power, a story about money, and a story about how one of America's most respected engineering companies lost its way. For most of the 20th century, Boeing was not just a company, it was an institution. Its heartbeat in Seattle, its culture was built by engineers, people obsessed with details, people who argued over calculations, people who believed that every bolt, every wire, every design choice mattered because lives depended on it. Inside Boeing, safety was not a marketing slogan, it was a philosophy. Engineers held enormous influence. The people building airplanes often had the final word. Profits mattered. Of course they did. Boeing was a business. But profit came after the airplane worked, after it was tested, after engineers were satisfied. The company built legendary aircraft, the 707, the 747, the 777, airplanes that became symbols of American industrial excellence. Customers trusted Boeing, pilots trusted Boeing, the public trusted Boeing, and that trust was earned over decades. Boeing's reputation was built on a simple idea. If an engineer raised a concern, leadership listened. If safety required more time, more money, or more testing, then that was the cost of doing business. It wasn't perfect. No large corporation ever is. But the center of gravity inside Boeing remained remarkably consistent. Engineers led, financial managers followed. The airplane came first, the stock price came second. That culture would not survive the 1990s. In 1997, Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas. On paper, Boeing was the buyer. In practice, many observers would later argue that McDonnell Douglas's management philosophy became dominant. One figure came to symbolize that transformation, Harry Stonecipher, a veteran executive from McDonnell Douglas. Stonecipher believed Boeing needed to focus more aggressively on shareholder value. Wall Street loved the message. Investors loved the message. Many engineers did not. Over time, a new language began spreading through the company: efficiency, margins, cost reduction, shareholder returns. These were not inherently bad goals. Every business must manage costs. Every public company faces pressure from investors. But critics inside Boeing believed the balance was changing. The company that once revolved around engineering increasingly revolved around financial performance. Then came a symbolic decision. Boeing moved its headquarters from Seattle to Chicago. The executives left. The engineers stayed behind. The physical distance became a metaphor. Leadership was now farther away from the factory floor, farther away from the design teams, farther away from the people actually building airplanes. Former employees would later describe a growing divide. Engineers talked about safety, executives talked about quarterly results. Engineers asked for resources, managers demanded efficiency, The stock price climbed, share buybacks expanded, investors celebrated. But beneath the surface, the culture was changing, and soon Boeing would face a challenge that tested every one of those priorities. The grounding triggered investigations across multiple countries. In 2010, Airbus unveiled a threat, the A320neo, a fuel-efficient aircraft promising major savings for airlines. Customers loved it. Orders poured in. Boeing faced a choice: design an entirely new airplane, or modify the aging 737 platform one more time. A clean sheet design would take years, it would cost billions. The faster option was obvious: update the 737, move quickly, protect market share. The result became the 737 MAX, but there was a problem. The new engines were larger, much larger. The 737 sat relatively low to the ground. Engineers had limited room. To make everything fit, the engines were mounted differently. That altered how the airplane behaved under certain conditions. In some situations, the nose could pitch upward more aggressively than before. Boeing's solution was software, MCAS, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System. If the aircraft appeared to be approaching a stall, MCAS would automatically push the nose down. The idea sounded simple, but simplicity can hide risk. The original design relied heavily on input from a single sensor. If that sensor failed, MCAS could activate incorrectly, and that is exactly what happened. Investigations later revealed that many pilots were given little information about MCAS. One of Boeing's major selling points was continuity. Airlines could transition pilots from older 737 models to the MAX with minimal additional training. Simulator sessions cost money. Training costs money. Anything that reduced those expenses made the aircraft more attractive to customers. Following the crashes, internal communications and investigations raised difficult questions about development decisions, certification processes, and the flow of information between Boeing, regulators, airlines, and pilots. The FAA delegated portions of certification work to Boeing personnel under long-standing industry practices. Critics argued that oversight had become too dependent on the manufacturer. Supporters argued the system was necessary given the complexity of modern aviation. But after 2 crashes, those arguments no longer felt theoretical. 346 people were dead. The 737 MAX was grounded worldwide, and Boeing faced the greatest crisis in its history. Congressional hearings followed. Lawmakers demanded answers. Families demanded accountability. Documents emerged. Emails emerged. Testimony emerged. The picture that formed was deeply damaging. Investigators described breakdowns in communication, breakdowns in oversight, breakdowns in safety management. Boeing eventually agreed to substantial financial settlements and penalties related to the MAX crisis. The company replaced senior leadership. Executives apologized. The aircraft was redesigned. MCAS was modified. Additional safeguards were added. Pilots received expanded training, but trust, once lost, is difficult to regain. Then came another shock. January 2024, an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9 suffers a dramatic mid-air door plug blowout. Passengers watch as part of the aircraft tears away at altitude. Miraculously, no one is killed. Yet the incident reignites fears that Boeing's quality control problems are not confined to the past. Investigations uncover manufacturing concerns, public scrutiny intensifies, and whistleblowers step forward. Among them are former Boeing employees who raise concerns about production practices and safety culture. 2 men receive intense media attention: John Barnett, Joshua Dean. Both die in 2024. Authorities publicly reported no evidence linking their deaths to foul play. Yet the timing fuels widespread speculation online. Questions spread across social media. Distrust grows. Conspiracy theories flourish. What remains beyond dispute is that confidence in Boeing has been profoundly shaken. The company that once represented the gold standard of engineering now finds itself fighting for credibility. And that brings us to the central question: not just about Boeing, but about modern corporations. What happens when financial pressure collides with engineering judgment? What happens when deadlines outweigh warnings? What happens when success is measured quarter by quarter instead of decade by decade? The tragedy of the 737 MAX is not merely a story about software, or sensors, or airplanes. It is a story about incentives, about culture, about decisions made in conference rooms that eventually affect people thousands of feet above the earth. 346 passengers and crew members never came home. Their seats remain empty, their stories remain unfinished, and their absence forces a question that every industry must confront. When human lives can be affected by corporate decisions, what is the true cost of putting profit first? Because once trust falls from the sky, rebuilding it can take a lifetime.